Now I'm going to be breaking down for you guys basically the entire offseason for the Oakland Raiders because it's been a pretty hectic one and going in depth with some of the players that I think that are, maybe a little bit more important. But let's get it first into the players that the Oakland Raiders re-signed. So the first guy I want to talk about, Justin Ellis, defensive tackle. If we could get him up here on that screen just so I can highlight some of the stuff that he's done, that'd be sweet. Ellis and the Raiders agreed to terms on the 3-year deal worth up to $15 million, which includes more than $6 million guaranteed money. Ellis has been with the Raiders for his entire NFL career. He was a 4th-round pick out of Louisiana Tech in 2014 draft and has appeared in 60 games of a possible 64, tying his career high with 14 starts last season. Let's get in now to some other guys I got coming up. E.J. Manuel, quarterback. In his first season with the club in 2017, Manuel served as the backup to quarterback Derek Carr and appeared in 2 games with 1 start, throwing for 265 yards on 24 of 43 passing with 1 touchdown and 1 pick. Manuel was originally drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the first round, 16th overall of the 2013 NFL Draft. Next guy coming up, Reggie Nelson, free safety. Nelson agreed to terms with the Raiders on a 1-year deal. Nelson, who spent the past 2 seasons roaming Oakland's defensive backfield, has a big-time familiarity with Gruden's new defensive coordinator, Paul Guenther. Guenther was a coach on the Bengals staff in some capacity, including several years as the team's DC during Nelson's entire tenure in Cincinnati, which spanned from 2010 to 2015. Nelson earned his first ever Pro Bowl nod playing in Guenther's scheme in 2015, logging a career-high 8 interceptions. Now at age 34, he'll have to change. You have the chance to help show some of the Raiders teammates how to thrive in that new system. Let's bring back up all those players that the Raiders re-signed. We got a bunch of guys there. We got Harris, we got Cowser, we got Denver Kirkland, we got Giorgio Tavecchio, the kicker, Lee Smith, tight end, maybe the most average name ever, but hey, he's not average in my book. Now let's get into some of the players that the Oakland Raiders lost. First guy coming up, David Amerson, cornerback. And this is a guy who, I'll be honest, I wasn't totally surprised with. He was a guy who I talked about a lot. But let's get into him a little bit more just so we can expand on that role a little bit. Amerson, Oakland cut the 5th-year cornerback, and Amerson played and started in 6 games for Oakland this past season, recording career lows into passes defensed with 4 and tackles with 14 while missing most of the year with a foot injury. Next guy coming up, Marshall Newhouse, offensive lineman. Newhouse signed a 2-year, $3.5 million deal last offseason and was set to count for $1.7 million against the cap in 2018. The Raiders do have young linemen, Vadell Alexander, but with the additions Oakland made in the draft, this offseason line, in my opinion, has improved. Next guy coming up, Sean Smith, will not be in Oakland next season. He will not be on any other team either. Not only is Smith being released by Oakland, he is headed to jail for a year as part of a plea agreement. Smith signed a 4-year, $40 million free agent contract with the Raiders prior to the 2016 season. He struggled for much of his 2 seasons with the team and had 0 guaranteed money remaining on his deal, so the release saved the Raiders $8.5 million. Next guy coming up, wide receiver, one of the bigger name guys, especially for fantasy football lovers, Michael Crabtree, has spent the last 3 seasons of his career with the Raiders, but in 2017 ended up being his last. The move saved Oakland almost $7.7 million. Next guy, I feel like I should almost pour out a beer for this dude. Kicker, Sebastian Janikowski. Janikowski, parting with the silver and black, caps a storied 18-year run with the franchise that made him the 17th overall pick in 2000. The move comes as no great surprise after the 39-year-old Janikowski spent all of last season on injured reserve with a back issue. Next guy coming up, cornerback T.J. Carrie. Carrie started 15 games for the Raiders last season, but is headed to the Cleveland Browns for 2018. Carrie was an Oakland native and a fan favorite, and personally one of my favorites here on the Raiders Report. Next and last guy I'm going to talk about, Autry, defensive end. Autry has 10.5 career sacks, 5 of which he earned in 2017. He also racked up 36 total tackles last season while starting 3 games and playing in all 16 games. Now let's bring up the rest of those guys that the Oakland Raiders lost. We got Cordarrelle Patterson, wide receiver, Marquette King, a punter, Clive Walford, tight end. We got Bradley, and then Olawale, fullback. Let's bring up a few more. Then we got Andrew East, not Adam West, which I always for some reason think about from Family Guy. Darius Latham, defensive tackle, Arden Bryant, Cory James, and Jihad Ward. And now let's get into some of the players that the Oakland Raiders added this offseason because, well, with John Gruden, it's been one busy one. First guy I got coming up for you guys is Doug Martin, running back. This is a guy who I loved personally when he was coming out of Boise State and was a stud at Tampa Bay, but The 29-year-old running back will attempt to salvage the next stage of his career under new Raiders coach John Gruden after rushing for fewer than 425 yards each of the past 2 seasons. The past 2 seasons, Martin has been one of the least efficient running backs in the NFL, struggling to break tackles, losing his early career bursts, and falling to game-positive yards on most carries. In 2016 and 2017, he averaged just 2.9 yards per carry on 282 combined carries. Next guy coming up is a wide receiver, Jordy Nelson. Maybe you've heard of him. The former Packers wideout is headed to the Bay, signing a 2-year deal with the Oakland Raiders worth $15 million, 13 of which was guaranteed. Nelson struggled in 2017 with 53 catches, 482 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But that may also be a little bit of Brett Hundley's fault. Next guy coming up is a linebacker, Tahir Whitehead. Whitehead spent 6 years with the Lions, slowly working his way up from a 5th-round pick that contributed early on special teams to eventually a full-time start at outside linebacker. He also served as the team's middle linebacker for a couple years, but was better suited on the outside. In 6 total seasons, Whitehead amassed 398 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and 54 total starts. Next guy, cornerback, one of my favorite signings of this offseason, Rashaan Melvin. Melvin had a solid year in 2017 with the Colts, despite only playing 10 games. He racked up 36 tackles, 13 passes defended, and 3 interceptions. Melvin played in 25 games with the Colts over the last 2 seasons before ending 2017 on injured reserve with a hand injury. Next guy, and this is one of the more recent ones, wide receiver Martavis Bryant. Bryant had a great rookie campaign in Pittsburgh, scoring 8 touchdowns in only 10 games. Bryant has the talent to be a star in this league. Think about this for a second. In 36 games, he's had 126 receptions for 1,917 yards and 17 touchdowns. This guy's got a lot of upside. Next guy, another wide receiver, another recent one. Ryan Switzer, wide receiver. Switzer can not only play some slot receiver, but he's also a very good special teams player. Switzer is familiar with current special teams coach Rich Basquia, as the two were together last season in Dallas. He is a guy who can help this roster in a number of ways. Next guy, and last guy I'm going to talk about, linebacker Derrick Johnson. Johnson is a 14-year veteran who spent his entire career with the Chiefs after they drafted him in the 1st round at pick number 15 in the 2005 NFL Draft. In 2017, he recorded 71 tackles, forced 1 fumble in 15 games. He's been a reliable linebacker in his career, playing 13-plus games in 13 seasons. Now let's get into some of the other players that the Oakland Raiders added. They got Gilchrist there at safety. Whitehead again, I mentioned him. DePaulo, long snapper. Melvin at cornerback. Let's get into a few more there. Colby Wadman, punter. Kyle Wilbur, linebacker. Tank Carradine, defensive end. Josh Johnson, quarterback. And then we got a few more. Sharice Wright at cornerback. Emmanuel Lamore at linebacker. Then we got Brino there at tackle. And Leon Hall, cornerback. And then now we got the added. Now let's get into some of the players that we just drafted in the 2018 NFL Draft, because we got some good names on this list. The first guy, though, is Colton Miller. He's an offensive tackle, and he's a guy that I really liked out of UCLA. The Raiders traded back in the 1st round from pick 10 to 15 with the Cardinals. The Raiders selected UCLA offensive tackle Colton Miller. At 6'9", 310 pounds, Miller possesses the athleticism and size to play left tackle, like I said before. Miller could be the man to step in for an aging Donald Penn. Next guy, the guy we drafted in round 2 at pick number 57, P.J. Hall out of Sam Houston State. The 2-time first-team Associated Press FCS All-American played defensive tackle as a senior. However, garnering first-team All-Southland Conference honorable by racking up 60 tackles, 19 for a loss, 6 sacks, and 6 pass breakups, and tying for the FCS lead with 4 blocked kicks. Next guy coming in, the guy we took in round 3 at pick 65, Brandon Parker, North Carolina A&T. A 4-year starter as the Aggies starting left tackle. He's only been called for 4 penalties in his entire career, and he's played in 35 straight games with 35 straight starts. That's impressive. Next guy, round 3, pick 87, Arden Key out of LSU. He has a special blend of height, length, and athleticism. He was an underachiever in his final season at LSU, but when he's in rhythm, he looks like a potential 15 sack per season kind of player. The Raiders aren't in Vegas yet, but they're rolling the dice with a player like Key. From a talent standpoint, he has first-round talent. Off the field, though, is where the concern lies. If he can stay out of trouble, this dude's going to be a star. Now, maybe the Raiders' best pick, maybe the best steal in the entire draft was in round 5, pick 140, Maurice Hurst, defensive tackle, and friend of the show here at Chat Sports. The undersized 280-pound defensive tackle was one of the top players in this year's NFL draft, but his draft stock dropped after he had an irregular EKG at the NFL Combine, despite being cleared by doctors. this was my favorite pick by the Raiders in the 2018 NFL Draft. But let's go through now all the Raiders Raiders draft picks. At pick 110, Nick Nelson out of Wisconsin, Maurice Hurst out of Michigan, Johnny Townsend, another guy, friend of the show, out of Florida. I got Azim Victor out of Washington, and then Marcel Aitman, wide receiver out of OK State. Now let's get into the UDFAs, the undrafted free agents. We had Marcus Ball, we had Snead Blacknell, Jason Cabina. Both those guys played at Penn State. Brandon Hodges, offensive lineman. Alex Officer, those guys played at Pitt. Alex Officer, by the way, maybe the greatest name for the Oakland Raiders. I just think it's super badass. Jamarcus King, then we got the next guys coming in at cornerback. Keyshawn McClain, safety. Eddie Pinheiro, kicker. Nick Sharga, unfortunately, has already been released. And then Nick Washington, defensive back. But, guys, those were a lot of moves. I want to know what you guys think. Give me what you guys personally believe. Give me a grade for John Gruden's first offseason. If you think it was a great offseason, it's an A. Give it a heart. If it's B, if it's okay, thumbs up. C for a wow face. And DNF if you just thought it was absolutely terrible. I guess you guys will give it the laughing face. I know you guys are pretty honest. Raider Nation, thank you so much for tuning in to Raiders Report. My name is Mitchell Renz. Please follow me on Twitter at MitchellRenz365. And until next time, go Raiders.